Future of Management Education by BW Education. How has the event been? How were the panel discussions? How are you
It
feeling?
was very interesting panel discussion. So we were, had very interesting perspectives. Some of it very different, but I think overall all of it became more enriched, and hopefully the audience also took something out of the conversation. Yeah.
Okay. So, Dr. Ramam, there has been, new advancements in the technology sector, and the education sector is also experiences generative AI as an inclusive part now. So, how are the B schools integrating it into their curriculum, and what are the challenges they're facing basically to do it?
When generative AI became much more prevalent, common in the last maybe 2 years, 2.5 years, I think all educational institutions, including B schools, probably started with a bit of skepticism, worrying about, is this going to take away the creativity, the kind of uh, integrative thinking that students will have. But I think largely we have overcome this, and we have understood the power of this technology to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of teaching, to cater to the kind of diverse needs, of students, so that you can pace the learning, right? If you give access to the students, there is a ability to pace the learning. It also enables to now cater to the different learning needs of a student, right? So that's the power. And I think the most important thing is also today, B schools really have to prepare students to use generative AI to be effective in the jobs that they're going to go into, right? Because any employer today really is asking, it's about how are you going to use generative AI to make your job much more efficient, more protective, and yeah. So I think that's really the status now. So clearly, for example, if you take our business schools, which is the KJ Somaya Institute of Management, we already benefited because we have for 30 years been providing a master in computer application. So we had a data science department with people who were already domain knowledge in this area, right? So we were benefited from that. So we were able to leverage that, and right from the beginning to really start thinking about how do we use generative AI for these various outcomes that I talked about. And so we have had a number of faculty development programs where we are kind of making faculties understand how do you use this in the classroom, right, effectively, so that students don't lose out. Students are not just going to use it and copy it and come. Yeah. So that's something. We are now developing methodologies to see how can different subjects use, for example, how do you use generative AI in finance, so that a finance professional can be much more, when he or she goes out into the market, become much more efficient. So that's really how we view the new technologies, and how we are embracing it, much more rapidly.
So my next question to you would be: B schools are facing challenges, in placements. So, what is what should be a B school's approach in bridging the gap between the curriculum education and what the industry actually needs? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah. So I think there are different kind of approaches, right? One is obviously that less of classroom and more of experience, right? And that's, even in the panel discussions, this has become a recurring theme. Now, not everybody is capable of doing it, maybe because of the location. So we are in the city of Mumbai. We have blessed from that perspective because it's a commercial city. It is much easier to access. So that is one. How do you get experiential learning? It is also about having the right mix of faculty who are pure academicians and faculty who are professors of practice or come from industry, so that whatever they teach, they can teach in the context of, how is this practiced in the industry, right? I mean, that's very important today. And so again, we really go out of the way to bring professors of practice, adjunct faculty, because there is a lot of people out there, who are now retiring, but also looking forward to engaging themselves productively with educational organization. They have a passion for teaching, right? So we really look out for them, and we have them in the to help our students to really bridge this gap. The third is really that, we have really identified, besides the core skills that an industry is looking for, what are the competencies that industry is looking for in a business school graduate, right? And we have identified through our own primary research and through secondary research 7 very important key competencies, which we call as core competencies. Right from day one, we are putting a lot of emphasis on this. For example, all our students undergo psychometric testing, where these relative strengths of an individual on these 7 competencies is measured, and we are giving it to them saying, hey, this is a mirror, right? Now you have 2 years to try and strengthen the relative strengths and think about how do you address the weakness. And each of our students are, they have a mentor faculty. The mentor faculty has this, right? So they work with them. And we also have something called as a student progression index, where we are no longer judging students purely on CGPA scores. That's only 50% of the student progression index. So we get them to do a lot of other things, reflective learning from, reading, journals that we send out, and reflecting on it. 10% weightage is given to sports, because we believe that business school students, if you have to be mentally fit, you have to be first physically fit. So we are inculcating that, passion for sports, that, discipline of having to at least do sports twice a week. We are encouraging them to go and participate in competitions, because that's where you really learn, right, how to. Yeah, so there are different approaches that we are using to really bridge that gap and make our students as day one ready as possible.
So my last question to you would be: there's a lot of talk going around corporate work environment. It is getting toxic. It is getting stressful. So how are B schools training their students to be capable of dealing with it? And what would you suggest to those corporate environments to make changes? What kind of changes should be made in their environment so that it becomes a better place to work?
Absolutely. So I would really, uh, starting with a recommendation to the corporates, that there is more than sufficient research out there which says that if your employees are not happy, your organization is not going to be successful, right? There is huge amount of organizational behavior research which substantiates that. So I will not go into it. Happy to share some of that. You have Indian business leaders who have taken this mantra and taken their company to great heights. I refer to Mr. Nair, who ran HCL on the premise that employees first, customers second. He has even written a book on this, right? And that company has adhered to that principle, and HCL has been a great success, on the back of that principle. So I think my message to the senior, CXOs and CEOs of big organizations is that it pays to have a good, healthy work culture where employees are looking forward to coming to work, rather than, when can I get out of this shithole? Yeah. Sorry, you can hear it. Okay, so that's my first page. Now, having said that, the other thing is that while you read a lot in the social media, etc., I also don't believe that this is a norm, right? I mean, this is an exception. Yes, I'm not saying that there is no organization with toxic cultures. There are organizations with toxic cultures, but there are also equal, perhaps even more, where there is a reasonably good environment for employees to work. Yeah. Now, if one of my graduates has the misfortune to be in an organization which has got a toxic culture, how are we preparing our students for it is really to help them to, be more agile and more resilient, right? I mean, that's one of the key competencies, one of the 7 competencies that you're working on. And it is, because it's not about toxic environment alone. See, the work world is changing very rapidly. I grew up in a generation where I could join a company and I spent 22 years with one company, right? Those days have become almost gone. I mean, today, there are research and predictions that somebody from Generation Z will probably have to change 14 jobs in their lifetime. Okay, I changed 3. That's about 4 or 5. Yeah. So that's going to be the norm, and there are going to be a lot more failures, in your work. So the most important thing that we can teach our students is how to be resilient, how to take this in the stride, how to not get really worked up because you failed at something, but look at that failure as what can I learn from this, and what can I kind of become better. So agility, resilience becomes a very, very important competency that we are trying to train our students. Yeah, and hopefully that will. The last point is that, you know, I think a country like India, which is moving from a 3 trillion to a 10 to 15 trillion uh, economy, younger generation will have a lot more opportunities. So if they are in a toxic environment, they don't necessarily have to stay there. They can be assertive, they can leave, and I'm sure, and I have full faith in the younger generation to be able to cope and make the best out of it.